Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to this fireside chat. Thanks for making time during these times. I'd like to also thank Catalyst 2030 team. Madalena is here today representing the team. It's a brilliant event they put together. And thanks for this opportunity for this fireside chat. I know we are all running helter-skelter, managing COVID situation, but also such forums are useful to just take a pause, set, think, reflect. So many thanks for that. And before we begin, I'd also like to just quickly acknowledge the unprecedented crisis that we're going through in India, especially losing nearly 4,000 lives every day, about 400,000 cases per day. And just saying out loud that our thoughts and prayers from this group and everyone here are with everyone who is going through this crisis, losing people, loved ones, or just struggling to get well. Our best wishes. In the next hour or so, I'm hoping that we have an engaging, interactive chat. We have an amazing speaker, and it's a one-to-one format, but we would still we've made room for engagements during the chat. Please feel free to say your questions, concerns, comments, whatever you have in the chat, and the team will pick it up. I will also look through as I speak. I'd also request everyone to keep introducing yourself as you come in the chat, and just say your name, city you're joining from, maybe the organization you represent, so that we know each other. About me, my name is Sunish Jauhari. I live in Bangalore. I work with the Vitamin Angels as president for India. About 25 years of work in various areas, ranging from PR, media, cross-border trade consulting. In the last 10 years or so, I worked very, very closely with amazing social entrepreneurs, learning from them. And I joined Vitamin Angels recently. I have colleagues from Vitamin Angels here. Thanks for all their support as well. Some housekeeping bits here. So 2 things specifically. One, as I said, if you have questions, please to put them in the chat. If you are tweeting during the chat, you can use two hashtags that we are using as standard. And Rituparna, if you can just put them in the chat. One is hashtag POSHAN Jan, and the other is hashtag catalyzing change. That's catalyzing with an S, not a Z. So let's kick off. What are we talking about today? I often feel that it's the very genesis of a thriving society. Nutrition and a nourished mind in early childhood. We're talking about malnutrition today as a problem. We will delve deeper into it as we go. As I said, we have an amazing speaker who represents the sector, has worked for many, many years, nearly 2 decades in this area. But essentially, where India is in terms of malnutrition is concerning today. It's a complex issue, complex problem. But just sort of headline things, and I'm sure many of you know better than I do. About 68% of under 5 deaths that happen in India is because of malnutrition. 1 in every 3 women of reproductive age in India is underweight. There's a huge issue of stunting under 5, children not gaining the birth weight. Well, I don't know if you know, but very recently there's a new recent family health survey that happened, and it showed very concerning results on anemia, which is also one of the reasons why maternal morbidity and mortality is there in India, and so with children also. Why I'm saying that it's complex, because it's obviously a health issue, it's a public health issue. There are very large and very long-standing state programs that are going on in this area. And yet we have not really, we've always caught up or tried catching up with the situation, never been on top of it in any of the areas in malnutrition as a subject in India. It does connect with 2 specific SDGs, and I'm saying SDGs here because that's the specific agenda for Catalyst 2030. One is zero hunger, which is SDG 2, and SDG 3, which is good health and well-being. I'm really excited with who I have today with me. Is a person, as I said, who has spent many years in this area. I would say he's a very dear friend of the sector, a phenomenal leader, someone who is deeply passionate about changing the nutrition landscape in India and globally. So let me introduce Arjan Wagt. He joined UNICEF India as Chief Nutrition in March of 2017. He's a national of the Netherlands. He has about 25 years of work experience, has been with UNICEF for about 20 years, holds a master's degree in nutrition from Wageningen University. I hope that I got the name right, in the Netherlands. Arjan has worked in the area of nutrition across sub-Saharan Africa, in countries like Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and others. Besides his work in nutrition, Arjan also has experience working strengthening health systems across the globe, but specifically through performance-based financing and community insurance schemes and programming. So Arjan, very warm welcome to this fireside chat. Thanks for making time.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you very much. And welcome to everyone. And there's a lot of people are here, and I'm just following the chat and the variety of colleagues and people. It is amazing. And I'm really looking forward for having the discussion with you and also with them today. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It's an, as I say, interactive session. We're just sort of placeholders, Arjan. So I'm hoping that everyone will. So let me kick it off with the current situation, which we can't disconnect with, Arjan. the outset. So could I ask if you could take us through, in simple words, the problem of malnutrition and what it means for the country of India? And does it become, as I said, COVID situation, does it become more concerning when the country is going through such a crisis?
Yeah, and to this evening, I'm going to be a bit biased. I'm going to talk a lot about children, in particular the younger children. I'm going to talk quite a bit also about women. Not only because women are mothers of children, but also women, we see that malnutrition rates in women tend to be very high. That does not mean that you don't see malnutrition also in men and in older children, but the risks there are slightly less. If you look at children under 6 months, under 6 years, you see that almost half of the children have got one form or another of malnutrition. They're too light, their weight is not big enough for their age. Some of them are very skinny. They might have lost weight because they've been ill. And many of us who are parents, you know, if your child got very serious diarrhea, actually the child might lose quite a bit of weight. Even us, I mean, if you're ill for 2 or 3 days and then you got heavy diarrhea or other problems, actually you do lose a little bit of weight. It's for adults not as risky as for children. And then this famous stunting. Stunting basically means you're too short for the length that you could be. Now, some people would argue that well, it depends on what part of the world you're from. No, not completely. I'm not going to rule it out completely, but overall, the potential for height is very similar for every person around the world. I'm an average size person from the Netherlands. When I'm standing in an elevator here in India, I tend to be about, well, above my head higher than the others in the elevator. So Indians tend to be shorter than me, not because they're Indians, but because overall the nutritional status was not as good. People say, no, it is because Indians are short. Well, we have studies that we've done that, for instance, Indians that moved to London and lived in London, you see that their generation, their children are as tall as people who are born in London or are not from Indian parents. So actually, it is really about other factors than just genetics. It is actually, it's the diet, it's the illness, it's many factors. And I like stunting. And stunting, you might say, well, it's not so important because it doesn't matter if you're short or tall, although it's easier to reach the highest shelves in the kitchen. But for me, it's an indicator of development. Stunting is caused by poor health of the child, but even poor health of the mother. It is caused by poverty, food security, diarrhea, illness. So it's a combination. It's almost like there are few indicators that we have, but that actually measure many SDGs and many facets of development. And for me, stunting is one. Stunting says something about the nation, not only children. But it's not only stunted length, it's also stunted immune system. Yeah, you don't get the adequate nutrients to build a strong nutrition or a strong body and strong immune system. And not only that, it's even brain stunting, if I may call it like that. Actually, you see children that don't get the right nutrients, their IQ is lower. Now imagine here, India invests a lot of money in education systems, primary school, secondary school, people going to universities. Parents are really saving a lot of money to support the kids going to school. But actually, for a lot of kids, the damage is already done before they enter the building of the school. Many of these kids have got stunted brains, and that's irreversible. What happens in this first 1 or 2 years is irreversible. Some of these brain connections might not be fully made, and that's irreversible. And these children have to work even harder to perform as well as other children. So we talk about stunted length, stunted immune system, stunted brain, stunted society, stunted future, stunted nation. Now you get COVID. What you see happening in COVID, that people get COVID. Now you see that the risk of COVID in children is lower, and also the risk of mortality is lower. But at the moment, health centers are closed. Anganwadi centers are closed. Children are not getting midday meals. There's no take-home ration. there is not the monthly counseling and support to parents coming to the Jauhari centers for the child. So these services are affected. People are losing income. There's more food insecurity. And 3 years ago, the Prime Minister, he launched POSHAN Jan. I love POSHAN Jan. POSHAN Jan is one of the best programs I've seen in the world. Launched by the Prime Minister. I've seen that many times. I've seen many presidents, many prime ministers launching things. But actually in India, there was an action after that, because it's not about the launch, it's about the action. And you saw that a lot of people started, and sectors and ministries all the way up to community level started working on nutrition. Nutrition was a hot issue in the first 2 years of POSHAN Jan, till COVID came. If you look at the newspapers in the last 1 month, or even last 2 months or 3 months, the attention for nutrition has gone down. Of course, I would say, but that might affect the response to nutrition. So if we say, first of all, stunting and nutrition tells you something about children, the community, society as a whole. It tells you something about the country as a whole, and we have a challenge there. And then on top of that, we get COVID, and actually COVID could turn back on many of the opportunities, many of the progress that has been made in the last few years in reducing malnutrition, and the promise that POSHAN Jan really gave to the sector and to the response. Thank you. Over to you.
So Arjan, thanks. Thanks for reflecting there and sort of sketching for us as a sort of broad issue. Let me request to add a layer, right? If you touched on how COVID has affected broadly, but do you also think that a pandemic like COVID affects different people differently?
Yeah.
There are people who are largely affected. There are people who are not so badly affected, still have access to, for example, services. Those who were, for example, in hard to reach areas, they're further affected. They're further cut off from let's say, state services.
Yeah.
Can you reflect a little bit there? How does COVID-like pandemic situation affect different people differently?
Yeah. Oh, I think you already partly mentioned it. Of course, we see that if you ask me which are 3 possible pathways how COVID could affect nutrition status, I already mentioned the policy response, the investment for nutrition, the political and other leadership in the sector. That probably affects people in a similar way. But if you talk about poverty because of losing income, then of course the poorer people tend to be having less strength to deal with these kind of shocks. And also access to services. I mean, if you have money, then you can afford services. But let's keep in mind, malnutrition is not just a poverty problem. Let's use stunting again, but I can also say the same for wasting and some of the other indicators. But let's use stunting. About 1/3, 1 in 3 children under 5 are stunted. About 1 in 3. If you look at the poorest part of the society, the poorest quintile, we see that about more than half of the children are not stunted. I could have said are stunted. I could say about half of the kids are not stunted. The same time, about 20% of the children in the richer families, they are stunted. So you see a clear relation between income and stunting. So I would expect that also COVID, through these economic impact, will affect that unequally. But it's not going to be the only thing. And I think we have to recognize that there's something else. And I think it's got to do a lot with behaviors. If we see 2 points in the life cycle where we see a lot of malnutrition happening, it's among pregnant women. Yeah, and actually before pregnancy, a lot of girls, young women, they get pregnant too early. The body's not even strong enough. Yeah, or they were thin even before they got pregnant. And then during the pregnancy, they don't get enough weight gain as well. Well, a malnourished pregnant woman is very likely to give birth to a malnourished child. Yeah, and many children, they are born with low birth weight. They start their life malnourished because of that. And the other time is breastfeeding part. Breastfeeding is not 100%, but in particular this time from about 6 months onwards, then breast milk is not enough and a child needs to eat other nutrient-rich foods. But they're not getting that. Less than 10% of the children between, let's say, 6 and 24 months or 6 and 12 months, less than 10% of these children getting enough meals and nutrient-dense food. And let me give you an example. I mean, enough meals. The size of the belly of a little child at that age is about this size. Imagine you put thin rice or watery rice or rice with a lot of thin dal, water in that. Then you fill the stomach, but you don't give nutrients. Also, if you only feed that once or twice or 3 times a day, it's not enough. A young child needs 5 to 6 meals per day or snacks. What is not happening? Only less than 1 in 10% of the children in that age group in India, across socioeconomic strata, are getting enough meals. Yeah, and the nutrient-rich meals. It needs to be nutrient-dense food. And I think that parents often don't know. It's not just poverty. And I just showed you that with the stunting, with the stunting pictures. Not every poor child is malnourished, and not every rich child is healthy. Yeah, so there is behavior, there are knowledge. Many parents just don't know. It's often that as if food is getting rid of hunger or food is having something in the stomach. But people have to learn that nutrition is not about just food. It is about the right food, the right quality food, meaning nutrient-dense, nutrient-rich food in the stomach. And that's several times a day, in particular for the younger child, but also a pregnant woman. She needs to eat several meals a day. Back to you.
Yeah, and so I hear, I mean, behavior is where the buck stops, and so as you were referring to it some time back, that it's a large issue, but essentially people eat and make decisions. So absolutely, we're going to take a quick poll here, and also before we do that, I'd request people to start posting questions. If you have any questions for Arjan, please do put them in the chat. We've set up a quick poll, which is a generic poll. We're asking one question with a few multiple choice answers. Please do, Madalena, can you put up the poll, please? So the question is, what are the 2 most pressing challenges in nutrition that NGOs in India are facing today? So you have to pick 2 only, and you may feel more than 2, but good to just point to those 2 that you feel are the most pressing for you as an organization, or if you're an individual working in this area. And we will we'll post the results. We'll give it a few minutes while we get into another question, so you have some time. So I also feel, whenever we talk about complex problems, we often talk about, it's bigger than one individual, bigger than one organization, bigger than one institution, or even bigger than one policy framework to solve. People need to come together, co-create, do things together. And I often feel that it's oversimplified idea. But I also believe in the fact that whole is better than sum of its parts. But what is the whole? What is that one goal that if people come together around the area of nutrition to deal with malnutrition? What could be that one piece that people could come together and build, and how will it sustain?
Yeah. No, thanks. Government, we talk a bit about POSHAN Jan, and if I look at India, policy-wise, program schemes, the food and nutrition response is really, really good on paper. Yeah, there are very few countries that have got things like ICDS systems and all these programs from Ministry of WCD and from Ministry of Health. There's very few countries have got these programs. Now the problem is the implementation, but also when the Prime Minister launched POSHAN Jan, he also recognized that government is not going to solve the problem. And I think it's not the responsibility, personally, I think it's not the responsibility of the government to do it alone. But a government can provide schemes and support and knowledge, they can have safety nets. But at the end, children are eating at home, mothers are eating at home, fathers are eating at home, and that is the place where something needs to be done. And that's why the Prime Minister understood himself when POSHAN Jan was developed, said, hey, we need a Jan Aandolan. We need a social movement. We need people to come together. People need to know, people need to be aware, people need to be motivated about nutrition. And yeah, I strongly believe in that. I don't think that government can solve all the problems in the world, and definitely not malnutrition. Malnutrition is what happens around the dining table. Yeah, what happens in the kitchen, what happens in the dining room. That is where malnutrition happens, ultimately. And the government doesn't come there. They don't come to your dining table. Yeah, so we need, now, who can do that? Now imagine you got community groups, support groups, formal groups, informal groups, that imagine that we would all come together to talk about nutrition. Let's first define malnutrition, that there's an issue. And also let's recognize that if collectively we can increase, I call it nutritional literacy. Yeah, there's a lot of focus on educating young Indians, children about reading and writing. Now imagine we can have nutrition literacy. People need to understand that nutrition is more than food in the belly. Yeah, it's about healthy eating. Now imagine that people would start talking about it, that community groups, religious groups, women groups, young people groups, social media groups would start talking about nutrition. That's a key first step. And for me, that's part of the Jan Aandolan. But you don't, that needs to come from down there. That's not something that top down you're going to steer. And I have this dream that, and that's what we mean with the POSHAN Jan. Imagine you have a house where collectively we come together and we work together, and this house is not owned by anyone. It's our joint house. And from within that house, we're going to get motivated, activated, inspiring, but we're also going to get the tools to empower us and all these civil society organizations to educate communities about good nutrition. A very concrete example, in our neighborhood, and I live here in South Delhi, in our neighborhood we have, like in many areas in Delhi, you've got these neighborhood groups, these formal neighborhoods, they take care of the security, etc., etc. And there's a WhatsApp group to let us know what's happening in nutrition. And they were sending messages about prevention of COVID. They started a year ago. And I was wondering, hey, what would it take to have that neighbor group, which is a group, what would it take to have them also talk about healthy nutrition? Well, in this case, I see a lot of, not necessarily undernutrition, I see a lot of obesity in the neighborhood. I live a bit more upmarket the neighborhood. But imagine that a group like that would say, wait a minute, we are for the people, we are there to help each other. Let's also do simple sharing of messages. But where do they get that information from? And that's what POSHAN Jan is about. It's about a place where stakeholders are designing messages, are designing tools, are designing materials that you can get to share with the people you're working with. Yeah, and you need to get that inspiration and bring that also then to those communities. So again, that you get, imagine you have hundreds, thousands, there must be hundreds of thousands of formal and informal civil society, formal groups, informal groups at community level. Imagine they could get on board, and even the small things, educating and trying to get this nutrition literacy, because without nutrition literacy, you're not going to get a POSHAN Jan Aandolan, and you're not going to get an end of malnutrition. Government is not going to stop malnutrition. They can help, but at the end, it's the food that is being eaten at home. Back to you.
But Arjan, so let me be a devil's advocate here and ask you. So the number of challenges that our community organizations are facing today, right? So are we making a dangerous assumption here that is the communications, information, knowledge, and what you're calling nutritional literacy, those tools are currently missing or we need better uniform tools, and that will solve the problem. Because I see a number of organizations with obviously individual differences, dealing with diverse communities, having several challenges to do with resources, human resources, just reach and access sometimes. Why do you think, what is compelling for a lot of nonprofits to come together and build something like POSHAN Jan?
Yeah. You know, at the end, we talk about social behavior change. Yeah, and that is difficult. I remember I had a road trip, what was before COVID. I went to, we drove around in MP. From Delhi, we drove to MP. And we drove all around the state. In about 2 weeks, we drove 2,600 meters. And on the way, I saw a lot of advertisements of soft drinks. I saw a lot of adverts of Maggi noodles, Coca-Cola. I saw a lot of these kind of adverts. In those 2,600 kilometers, I saw one building which was promoting breastfeeding. Yeah, it was a breastfeeding corner close to a bus stop, a place where mothers can give breastfeeding while waiting for the bus. In 2,600 kilometers. Now, I must admit, I'm partly jealous. And what you see happening in COVID at the moment. Yeah, COVID messages are left and right, all around throughout the country. And even there, it is still difficult. But let's be honest, in 1 year time, everyone has learned about COVID. Everybody, it didn't exist before. We even didn't know the word COVID. Within 1 year, the whole society has learned about COVID, and they know what they need to do about it. Many people do, not all of that, and that's why we see the crisis at the moment. But there's a lot of awareness, so it can be done. But it cannot be done by having one message in a public space in 2,600 kilometers, which is competing with messages on eating noodles and soft drinks, which are not nutritious. Yeah. So imagine that, and I think many of these organizations that we have, and that don't have to be organizations about nutrition. Many organizations, many of the community groups are interested in the well-being, in the health, in the wealth, in the prosperity, in the development of society, of its members. Yeah, and without nutrition, there is no health, there is no wealth, there is no prosperity. That will not be the maximum future you can get. Yeah, so I hope that joint aim can bring us together. I'm not asking us all to do the same thing, but the idea is that POSHAN Jan does provide a platform with the tools, with information that you can trust. Because at the moment, if you go to the internet, well, everything seems to be healthy. Even those things that I know are extremely unhealthy because you don't know what you can trust. Well, POSHAN Jan, that house that we jointly own, we can trust. And people can get that information there and use it within their own system and in their own way that suits them. Back to you.
Sure. So thanks for that, Arjan. We're kind of halfway through, and I just wanted to pick up a few questions which are coming through. But before I do that, can we show the poll result, please? Okay, so we have our, well, that's not a surprise. Funding resources tops the list. Arjan, anything to reflect there? I see with great interest partnership networks is in third place. Knowledge and nutrition obviously second place, which is good, which is very interesting. I think connects with your point about the knowledge resources that you're talking about. Anything to reflect there?
Yeah, no, I think that, of course, the funding, and I think all these organizations, of course, they want to do their work, and there's funding needed for that. That's not what POSHAN Jan is going to be able to give, and that is sad. And I wish we could. Again, POSHAN Jan is not owned by anyone. And you see also very clearly behind me and behind you, there's no logo, there's no branding. It's a joint house. It's a house that we're going to build together. We're going to own it together. You're going to have people who are going to visit, they go away. Some other people, they are going to stay. And we're going to do that together. We need different types of people there as well. And what I see here, indeed, the knowledge of nutrition coming out. That was not on purpose. This is the real poll of, I don't know how many participants there are, but indeed the knowledge of nutrition is coming out. There's so many taboos. Yeah, there's so much fake news when it comes to nutrition. There's so many things that people just don't know. And that contributes to malnutrition. And that should be the simplest to deal with. Treating diarrhea is more complicated than using the foods that you have available and giving it the right way. Yeah, so we need to give that knowledge to the people. We need to build that nutrition literacy. But people in the organization that we talk about, it's about inspiration. I want people to get inspired by nutrition. Again, without nutrition, there won't be health, wealth, prosperity for anyone. Yeah, so I want to get people to get inspired, to inspire each other. Yeah, and say, hey, wait a minute, we have achieved this. And no, I'm not going to ask them to only do nutrition. I see some radio groups. Yes, I would love if these radio groups once in a while talk about nutrition. Am I not going to ask you to do only nutrition? No, you cut your other business as well. But it doesn't cost you much, if anything at all. And I hope that through POSHAN Jan, we will start bringing the tools, the jingles, the information. We hope that you will be able to use that, including some of the other CBOs that I see mentioned here who are working on completely different areas, but making a link with nutrition, with growth, health, wealth, prosperity is so easy for most of the community groups, civil society groups that we have together.
Sure. And spot on, because I remember growing up with all the good and great messaging on radio and the only TV channel that we had at that time. Sadly, now it's very cluttered and crowded. And your point about radio, I think there's a question from Hani Patnaik. How can we put in more information through the radio about nutrition for pregnant women, friends? I think it's answered there. You just answered it. Just looking at other questions, Arjan, what is the actual problem with using energy-dense food in India? Why is it such a taboo? Do you want to reflect on that?
Let's take the first one about the information. I know that there are places on the internet where you can get videos, where you can radio jingles, materials. There is so much out there, but people don't know how to find it. Yeah, there's some good examples of organizations that are trying to bring together. NITI-IO just launched a new initiative called POSHAN Jan, if I pronounce it correctly, which is a website where a lot of IC materials, social behavior change, communication materials, they are there. You can pull them out, but you need to know that. Yeah, we also have got Impact for Nutrition. It's a platform where they're trying to, what we are trying to do with civil society, Impact for Nutrition is trying to do it with companies. Can we inspire companies to do some work around nutrition within the communities where they work, but also for their own employees? Imagine that every company would educate their employees and the families about good nutrition. Now, imagine you got 100,000 companies in India educating their employees about good nutrition. Wouldn't cost them much. Let's give them the tools, let's give them the materials, wouldn't cost them much. Yeah, there's even a good return because those the employees will be ill less because they're stronger, they've got better nutrition. Yeah, and the children are not going to be as ill because they have better nutrition. So there's even a reduction of illness of the staff. It's also good business for good business and good engagement of the employees, of course. But companies don't know that. Yeah, they don't have the tools. So I think these are the kind of examples where I think it's often about bringing things together. And that's what POSHAN Jan will be about. And POSHAN Jan, we're totally at the beginning. This is the first, and congratulations to you and the organizers. This is the first event where POSHAN Jan is shared outside. And we are part of a small group of organizations that really get excited. But we also recognize we can't build this house alone. On the question on nutrient-dense food,
Yeah.
I don't know what is, I'm not, in this case, I don't know if they mean commercial nutrient dense food. I even mean simple things. It is in some parts of India, it is very normal to put a little child of a year old, to put the child on your lap when you're having dinner. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you put a child on your lap and the child is being fed from the plate that the mother has.
Right.
Now, how many adults that are today listening, how many adults have eaten baby food today? I would guess probably none. But by putting the child on our lap and putting the child, making the child eat from the father or the mother's plate, the child is going to eat adult food. Adult food is a lot of rice, thin dal, yeah, that fills that stomach with rice and some thin dal. Doesn't have the nutrients. On the other hand, if you had taken some of the thicker dal before, if you had put some vegetables, if you had added some extra oil, just a small amount, then you have a nutrient-dense food for the child. It's the same food that the parents eat, but it is made specially for the child. So adults, we don't eat baby food. Let's stop giving adult food to babies. And that's what I meant with nutrient-dense food. Same for pregnant women. Are we going to give them all this huge amount of rice? I mean, rice is important, there's energy in it, but it doesn't have all the nutrients a person needs. There's the vitamins, the minerals, the protein is barely there. Yeah. So are we going to give them a big part of the rice, or are we going to give them some of the more nutritious foods as well? And probably maybe not just 2 times a day, but probably 4 or 5 times a day, because she needs to eat more frequently. She needs to eat for herself and for her baby. So that's what I meant with nutrient-dense food. And yeah, sorry, you all listening here, you know much better what these dynamics are at household level. Why is it happening that it is like that? And we need to change that. But let's first talk about it. And that is where civil society needs to come in. We need to bring these discussions to the communities. It's not about telling them what to do, what not to do. It's about engaging with parents, with communities. Yeah, and only civil society can do that. Only community groups can do that. Back to you, Sunish.
So I am just picking up a couple of other questions. So Anishka Sharma asks how social behavior communications plays an important role in creating impact. And I'll pick up another. There's a huge amount of fake news and taboos around nutrition in the country that needs immediate demystifying through utilizing several platforms available. Yeah, these two.
Yeah. No, I think at the end it also got to do with having the right information and knowledge, and it needs to be shared. You know, the sad thing is I've seen so many great videos, even translated, a lot of these videos, a lot of the materials, a lot of the posters, a lot of the messaging, they are being translated. I see so many organizations developing their own tools, their own materials. They're quite good. Yeah, but it's being broadcast once. Well, you're not going to change behavior, knowledge, nutrition literacy, and not even to talk about nutrition behavior by telling people once. Imagine imagine you invite me to your home, to come and eat at your home. Yeah, and imagine I'm saying, you know, I'm from the Netherlands. I see what you're eating. Thanks for inviting me. But seriously, you need from now on, you need to eat deep fried fish with raw cabbage. The Lancet articles have said that stops all malnutrition. Will you be doing that? Of course you won't be listening to me. Yeah, but first of all, this fried fish with this huge pile of raw cabbage, you might not like it. And who am I to tell you that? I'm even not talking about the local ways of preparing food. And a Lancet, what is that? But that is how often we do go back to communities. We come up with top-down messages, we don't interact, we don't discuss. And at the end, if you do want to change behavior, it's about engaging, it's about sharing, it's about discussing, it's about finding solutions. A mother will say, I don't have nutrient-dense foods. So what do you have? And how can we make the foods that you have and that you have access to in the best possible way? Yeah, and I think that is where the challenge lies in social behavior change communication, the way we often do it. We think that a once-off jingle or a once-off video or a once-off, it doesn't make the difference. And that's why you see that everybody knows about COVID, because we have been talking about COVID again and again and again. It's from the bus stops here outside my house here, yeah, in Delhi, to the radio, to the TV, to the newspaper. Yeah, and then you do get a change. And for me, that one has a great example of the power social behavior change communication can have. And even that is still difficult. But we've never seen in India anything like that with regards to nutrition. And that is POSHAN Jan. We'll have to start working, helping us towards that.
How do you envision this in a country where the cultures change every 150 kilometers, language changes, the soil changes and the food changes. So do you see POSHAN Ghar carrying information, containing information about various parts of the country? And I go with where I'm coming from, and I see a sort of menu of things there.
Yeah.
How do you envision this? Because this diversity and disparity really concerns me. So how would it work?
Yeah. No, I like that question, and even the fact that you asked the question already gives part of the answer, I think, in that case. And I see some of the other comments as well. Again, POSHAN Jan is not a house that's owned by anyone. And I need people to come on board and help. I need architects. And probably we need to build this house in different places. Yeah, we need different architects that know the local best way of building a house, because I mean, a house in Himachal Pradesh is very different and needs to be different because it's much colder there than a house in Goa. But also the building material is going to be different. So I need all of us to come together to do that. It's not also, well, let's not wait for each other. Again, this POSHAN Jan is not going to be owned by anyone. Or I would say it's owned by all of us. Yeah? Yes. And again, this is the first time that we talk about POSHAN Jan, and we have an email address. We don't even have a website yet. That's how far we are. We want to get ideas, and we ask people to contact us, share ideas, connect, yeah, register yourself. And behind me, you can see the address. And let us know what you can do. We're looking for people who can say, well, I can develop materials for our community. You know, or we can say people, radio stations said, well, this is what I need, because I need people to tell this group of organizers around POSHAN Jan, what do you need? What language, what kind of material, and how do we adjust that? Yeah, so we really need to have this social movement, this coming together around this house, to build this house together. And as he said, most likely we need more houses in different parts of the country, but also need the adjustment of the tools, materials that are going to be brought together in this house to translate them in the local context. And again, you can't do that from Delhi. Don't do that from Delhi. Don't even try to do it from Delhi. That is why we need these local organizations to come on board and help doing that.
So there's one question from Dr. Smriti Pahwa. Any insights on what are the barriers for partnerships? I think it connects with, you know, when you said architects, we need architects to build POSHAN Ghar, and that might require partnerships that have not taken place before. So maybe this question connects with that and says for embedding nutrition into literacy and other missions so that it is everywhere, what is needed.
No, exactly like you say. It is often in partnership, we're waiting for the other one to do something. I see that even, well, the closest partnership is between me and my wife, as you can imagine, or me and my children. That's the closest partnership. And even there, we sometimes want to wait for the other one to do something. Yeah, or if there's a problem, you wait for the other one. Or if the dishes need to be done, you wait for the other one. So for me, that's the first one. Let's own this, let's build this together, let's design it together. But let's inspire each other. Let's guide each other. Let's own each other. Let's lead together. And you don't have to wait for even the POSHAN Jan. I mean, if there's a group here that says, oh, wait a minute, can we start tomorrow? Please write to this email address. And even though we don't have the central place yet to bring all these tools, materials, I can link you, well, not tonight, tomorrow I can link you with a huge set of tools and materials if you already need that. We can help you already that. Take it. and feedback, because for me it's all about feeding back. Yeah, this is not one directional. I want to have, and very soon, most likely already in about a week's time, we're going to be able to set up a Facebook page, yeah, and a group where people can also share, what are you doing? I want people to share, make pictures of what do they do in promotion of nutrition. If there's a community radio and you've done something on nutrition, please post that on that Facebook group that we will be setting up in probably in a week's time. Yeah, post it, share it, inspire, and be part of breaking these silos between each other. It's not about competition. Let's not depend on each other. Let's not expect from each other. Let's collectively contribute to this house and make a difference in stopping malnutrition in the country.
That's a brilliant pitch, Arjan. Thanks for that. I'm fired up and inspired. But before because we just have our 6-7 minutes to go, I want you to answer what do you see as a role for the private sector and young people here?
Yeah, let's start with the private sector. Yeah, and here I mentioned already impact for nutrition, which is a bit similar to, as POSHAN Jan. POSHAN Jan is really about civil society. Impact for nutrition is trying to inspire companies to get engaged. And we use 3 things. And I call it use your ACE cards. Yeah, your best card, your ACE card. I want companies to within their business, they can do something on nutrition. Imagine you're a grocery shopkeeper. Yeah, people buy the groceries. You put it in the grocery bag and you give them the bag. Yeah, and that bag there's written Arjan's groceries come again. But now I'm going to write Arjan's groceries come again for nutrition-rich vegetables and fruits. Yeah, printing that, adding that doesn't cost anything. Imagine I'm a pharmaceutical company or I'm a chemist. Yeah, can I put up some communication materials or promotion of iron folate tablets and explain how important that is to reduce anemia? The investment is there. It will cost me. The poster will cost me a bit of money, but people will buy the IV tablets. Yeah, and that is part then of one of the targets and one of the areas we want to work on. So within your assets as a company, you can do a lot of things. It doesn't cost that much. And for me, that's part of your assets. So the A. Then we have the C. Many companies are active in doing good things. Yeah, they're doing CSR. And the question is, whenever you do a CSR, yes, I would love you to do CSR only in nutrition. And if you go to the Impact for Nutrition website, there are tools, there are guidelines, how can you do CSR on nutrition? But even if you do something on education or something else, can you bring in nutrition? So that's the C. And the last part of your ACE card, your best cards, the E, is educate your employees. And I already mentioned that. Imagine that 10,000 companies in India. That's just a small part of all the companies we have in India. Big and small. Yeah, from the biggest one with 100,000 employees to the shopkeeper around the corner with only 2 employees. Can they and can we, and that's what Impact for Nutrition does, they have some materials, they've got some guidelines, they've got some tools about healthy eating. Let's share that with them. Yeah, so this was something that the private sector can do. Well, for young people, there will not be a healthy, wealthy, prosperous future without malnutrition. So every young person that wants to have a good family and a good India, please, you need to start working on stopping malnutrition in India. Yeah, and there's so many, young people are often so motivated. They are actors for change. In the past, when I was studying a long time ago, we had this thing of child to child or child to parent interventions. But the idea was if you educate a child, the child will educate the parent. And indeed, my children here, they come home and say, hey, mom, I've learned at school that this is good and that is not good. Yeah, so can we also educate children, young children and older children as actors for change? And there are so many community groups for young people, from sports clubs to religious clubs to any kind of clubs and groups at community level that can take nutrition on board as well. And if they're not there, can we somehow motivate young people to come together to be advocates, to be champions for nutrition. Yeah, it would be amazing if we can reach them, if we can mobilize them, and if we can get them to visit POSHAN Jan and to be part of this house and co-own the house. At the end, they're going to be the owners of the house in the future.
Thanks, Arjan. That's wonderful, and it's about time for us to wrap up. But if I were to ask you, what is the message? What do you want? How could people join, for example, POSHAN Jan? How could they become architects? What is the first step?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, as I said, it's the first time we go outside with this idea, and we want feedback on this idea. We don't want to move alone with this. We don't want to go further from where we are now. We want now to get feedback. So people contact us on the email. Send an email. Share your ideas. Share what you could do. What can you contribute to this house? Are you an architect? Are you a financer? Are you bringing a few stones or a door frame? Yeah. Do you have already an idea about an expansion? Do you want to build a small house yourself somewhere else? Let us know. Yeah, and let's do this together. So that's the first. That is for me the first part as a next step. Be part of the solution. And at the end, for me, children and malnutrition are two words that should never be together. India cannot afford. It's not financially afford. India cannot accept to have children and malnutrition in the same sentence. We need to stop this. We need to have an India where there is no malnutrition, and that is possible. So I would say, let's jointly build and co-own a house where all of us, we work together, we inspire, we guide, we support, we build, we spread nutrition literacy. And we are part of changing India forever. An India with wealth, health, prosperity, and India with a POSHAN Jan. Let's come together and stop malnutrition in India for now and forever. And I think that's what my message is going to be. Thank you very much.
Lovely. What a note to end with, Arjan. Thank you so much. Children, malnutrition cannot be together. It's very powerful. Thanks very much, everyone. You can send your comments, questions about POSHAN Jan and the ideas to poshangar@gmail.com, which is the email put in the chat. Many thanks for all your questions so far, and patiently listening and making this a lovely success. Thank you, and thanks, Arjan. Thanks, Catalyst 2030 team. Thanks, Rituparna. Thanks, Rachna, Sumita, and everyone who's been a part of this.
Yeah,
have a good.
And especially thank you for all the participants, and we're looking forward for you to co-own the house. Looking forward for your visit. Thank you so much also to you and to the organizers. Thanks.
Bye-bye.